Welcome to the Exploring Unschooling podcast. I'm Pam Laricchia, longtime unschooling mom and author. Join me and my wonderful guests for interviews, information, and inspiration about unschooling and living joyfully with your family. You can find the episode show notes, your free introductory ebook, What is Unschooling, and lots more information at livingjoyfully.ca. And here's the show. Hello, everyone. I'm Pam Laricchia, and this is episode number 56 of the podcast. It's the 25th of January, 2017, as I record this intro. And this week, it's Q&A time. Ann Ohman and Anna Brown joined me at our virtual roundtable to answer your unschooling questions. This month, we talk about things to do instead when we drop control as a parenting tool, what to do when you find yourself tempted to tell your kids, we have to do this because I've spent money on it. Communicating our limits and needs in relationships with our children. Challenges with falling asleep at night. And balancing housework and being engaged with our children. This month, we've added the approximate time that each question starts to the show notes. So if you want to hear a particular answer, I think this might help you find it faster. And as always, thanks so much for your questions. And remember, if you'd like to submit a question, just go to livingjoyfully.ca/podcast and click on the link. As a personal update this week, the big news is that Michael is now officially a knight at Medieval Times. He began performing that role last week. Friday night was his first show. He said it was amazing, and it was great fun to see that Medieval Times posted a great action shot of him as the Blue Knight jousting in his first show on Instagram. I also posted it online if you'd like to see it. He's now done 4 shows and is really enjoying it. He was home Monday and Tuesday, which is his, quote, weekend, and we celebrated with some very chocolatey cake. And a big thank you to everyone who's supporting the show on Patreon, especially new patron Kelly Callahan. I deeply appreciate your support. I love that you're helping me share unschooling information with anyone who's curious to learn more and to explore ways to live this wonderful lifestyle with their family. If you'd like to support the show, even for as little as $1 a month, check out the Exploring Unschooling page at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/exploring unschooling. And this week, I want to share something that Anne mentioned in the episode. It's a mantra of sorts that she used and has shared over the years. Today, I will connect with my child, expand his world, bring joy into his life, and nurture and encourage what he loves to do. It's such a short and inspiring list of ways to shift into an unschooling mindset. It's a quick reminder of the important things in your day that immediately would lift me out of my myopic to-do list and bring back to the real focus of our unschooling lives, being with my children. I used to have it taped to the mirror in my bedroom. Maybe print it out for yourself and put it somewhere where you'll see it. It's a great reminder and very often leads to wonderful days. And now, on to your questions. Welcome to another Q&A episode. I'm Pam Laricchia from livingjoyfully.ca, and I'm so happy to be joined again by Ann Ohman and Anna Brown. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello, hello, and a very happy new year to you both.
You too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know it feels like it's been a while, but it's our first time in 2017. So would you like to get us started, Anna?
Yes, definitely. Okay, so question 1 we have is was actually submitted anonymously. So I have twin boys, almost 8, and an 11-year-old daughter. I have always said yes because of the whining and crying with the twins. They are high-strung, zero patience, and harp on things. So the boys have tantrums every day about wanting to wear a specific shirt or shorts that they have misplaced. And it's every day and fighting in the car and punching and hitting and screaming. And I'm at the point where I lose it and flip out. My parents never yelled at me. My husband yells. Now I yell, and I try not to, but they get me to my wit's end. I do not know how to fix it. I do what you say, sit with them, play games, read to them. They fight over who sits next to me. There's no control. Not that I want to control them, but they don't value my husband or me and only act good if I break down and cry. Okay. So first I just wanted to hold space a moment for her. I know that doesn't feel fun to be at your wit's end, and it sounds like there's just a lot of stress. I'm not sure specifically what the question is, but I hear in general that you're overwhelmed and that there's a lot of bickering and challenging energy in the house. For me, it helps to break things down into smaller pieces and also to look for patterns because it's just something I like to do. Are things hard at certain times of the day? Has everyone eaten? Are you feeling rushed? What's going on inside of your body? Watching for patterns allows me to see if there are things to do to head off potential issues. So you mentioned that clothes are missing every day. So maybe it's figuring out a system together, a place to throw the clothes so they're easy to find the next day. I had some friends that would actually bathe at night and get into the clothes for the next day because they didn't like that kind of stress in the morning time. When there's disagreements, we've talked about it a lot, but it's validate. Help each child feel heard. And as you get better at doing that, they will too. It'll kind of set this foundation for stating needs and hearing out the other party and then moving to that, work of finding solutions together. Right now, it sounds like they're needing some guidance with that process. But that doesn't mean that you have to jump in and solve or, pick sides, figure out what's going on. I found it most helpful to be kind of the neutral observer that's just helping each party feel heard and loved in that moment of stress and conflict. As a more general recommendation, I found it very helpful to focus on what I love about my children, and sometimes that involved making a list that I could refer back to. We have a friend, Deanna Buck, who has a process she calls joy writing. And joy writing, that's probably hard to hear. I'm thinking, what does that sound like? She takes time to write out a loving note with all of the wonderful things about her family and what she envisions for them all. So yours might talk about how much you enjoy being together, how you easily solve problems, how you laugh and play and feel peace and love when you're together. And then you take that paper and you read it, ask your husband to read it again. And that helps put you in the energy space of love and seeing all that is good around you. And in my experience, where we put our focus is what grows. So instead of describing the boys as high strung, zero patience, harping, you can envision them flowing with the family easily, bouncing back quickly from upsets, detail oriented, fun to be around, etc. How we see our children becomes a part of their inner talk. So it's worth taking a look at what's being put out there related to that. So, okay, that got a little bit long, so I'm going to hand it off to Anne now.
Well, I think mine is not much shorter, so.
Okay.
I wanted to address radical unschooling in general, maybe, because of how you said you have always said yes because of the whining and the crying with the twins. And what I'd like to do is I have an excerpt I'd like to share from one of my conference talks that is called "What is So Radical About Radical Unschooling?" I have the transcript for this talk on my website, shinewithunschooling.com. And Pam, was that a Toronto conference talk too? Do you have that on your website? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I do have the audio too. So I'll put that and the link to your website in the show notes.
Good, because the same talk comes up again in the next question. So, so anyway, in this excerpt, I'm addressing the spectrum of what people believe radical unschooling is, from unparenting to saying yes all of the time. So here it is. Radical unschooling is not abandonment or neglect or merely just the removal of control or rules. And by abandonment and neglect, I don't even mean those words literally, although this is what some people think is unschooling, sadly. I mean to abandon and neglect our children emotionally, parentally, and leave them feeling like they're alone on their path in life. It saddens me to think that some people do think this is unschooling, because to me and my family, the glory of our lives is found in just the opposite. It's not control or rules, but it is joyfully involved parenting, partnering, sharing, and guiding. It's giving information and sharing experiences and opinions, as well as being open to the child's information, experiences, and opinions. It is seeing the world through your child's eyes and sharing in his path no matter what it brings. The joys, the frustrations, the challenges, everything that is sweet and grand, and the challenges as well. It is walking away from trying to control a child's life and walking toward being co-creators with your child in his own unique path in life. Some unschooling parents even think the answer is to say yes more, but that doesn't feel right to me. I can see how it might help those who have felt a need to control their children, and it might help those who automatically give a knee-jerk no in response to a child's request. If it helps them to stop and not give an automatic negative response, then that's great. But I think it's just still surface stuff. The surface seems to be the place where there are only yeses and nos and nothing in between. It's the place where rules and parental control exist, as well as the absence of rules and parental control, without any real explanation or consideration or information. I like to go deeper. I think you have to dig deeper in order to really find and live radical unschooling. Because radical unschooling has a foundation built from the entire family's input based on everyone's feelings, opinions, experiences, and information. Not one person is saying yes, and not one person is saying no, and nobody is telling anyone to go and figure it out on their own. Everyone is working together to explore possibilities that lie within that spectrum between those two answers, yes and no. It's within the depths of radical unschooling where I'm able to be a student of my child. I can choose to ignore all of the typical societal messages or even the unschooling messages that exist on the surface, and I can go deeper and truly know and understand my child, not only his joys and passions and his strengths and his interests, but also his sensitivities and his challenges and his fears. Living a radical unschooling life in my family involves holding on to each of these things that make up who my child is and taking them all into consideration as we walk forward every day toward those things that allow him to shine the brightest. We hold on to these things that make up who he is as we work together and talk together about things that happened yesterday, what's happening right now, what this day may hold. This is how we're partners and co-creators in our children's lives. By digging and reaching and living deeper, I'm able to build and nurture a relationship with my children where we truly know and respect and enjoy and assist each other. They're not left alone to figure out the world. I'm there as their guide, their translator, their interpreter, and a direct, unencumbered, non-judgmental connection to their shining true selves. I am the one who listens, who shares, who trusts in them, who allows and encourages them to trust in themselves. This is my radical. So that's the end of the excerpt. So yes, if you yourself can make the deliberate choice to just not be at your wit's end, just right when you think you're at your wit's end, you can say, okay, I can choose to not say that I'm at my wit's end right now. And allow what is happening in front of you to be full of possibilities for communication and connection and knowing each other better. Then you'll be in a better position to allow conversations to happen and to allow possibilities to open up, besides all those wonderful practical things Anna said also. So breathe, and have some conversations. Perhaps try what I always refer to as briefing and debriefing. Before you get in the car with your kids in the morning or whatever, talk about where you're going, what you'll be doing, who needs what in the car to stay happy, and what you can do while you are out to communicate with each other. If somebody is having a hard time when you're out, let them know you'll listen to them, whatever they are feeling. Then the debriefing afterward, talk about how they felt about it, how they feel now, any difficulties that came up, talk about the fun you had. And Anna was pointing this out too. Talk about how you loved it when you did this certain thing together, or when you saw that amazing sunset together. And see if they feel anything needs to be done differently for the next time you go somewhere together. It really is the best gift in our unschooling lives, connecting with each other through mutually respectful conversations. And now to Pam.
I love that. Yeah, I loved all those suggestions that Anna had that fit so nicely in between your yes and no, Anne.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the ones you had in there, yeah, it really ties together. And that's what jumped out for me too. That piece where she mentioned she was saying yes because of the whining and the crying, because that's a big clue that I think you can use to start pointing you in some different directions. Because what it says is that really you're still keeping that control and power dynamic alive in your relationships with your children. So it sounds like you've stopped using power and control as a parenting tool per se, because you're saying yes, but your relationship is still based in that power dynamics, and your children are still using those tools. The whining and the crying, those are control tools because that's all that they know. So not only do you want to stop using control, but you want to replace it with a different kind of relationship. And that's what Anne was talking about too. It is a whole different thing. You're not just taking away the control, but you're replacing it with something. I dive deep into moving from that power dynamic to trust and connection in your relationships with our children in my talk of family of individuals. So I don't know if you've happened to listen to episode 48, but that my conference talk is there that you might find interesting. And I'll link to a blog post that I have about unschooling in the power paradigm as well in the show notes. But I think to start, just to start right now before you have a chance to go through that stuff is what they were both talking about. You're getting to know your children more deeply now. So rather than seeing your twins as high strung with no patience and harping on things, what you want to do is start to dig into the reasons underneath those behaviors. Those are just the behaviors you're seeing on the surface. Start to ask yourself questions and understand them as human beings. Start to see the world through their eyes. What is it that is making them impatient, and I had some great ideas, even just for the clothes in particular. So don't just say yes because you have no patience for how they're expressing their feelings in the moment. Find the other reasons for saying yes, like how you want to help them with those underlying issues that's causing their upset in the first place. And yeah, it's all about starting to get to know them really well, connecting with them, focusing on those positive moments so that you start to see a deeper relationship with them. Okay, question number 2, Anne.
Right. Number 2 is from Sonia. Hi, my kids are still little, 5 and 7, and we follow their interests as much as possible. But to be honest, it's expensive. I often find that I'll invest in something that they've shown a sustained interest in, only to find that as soon as I spend on it, they are on to the next thing. I find that what happens then is that I turn into school teacher mom, and we have to do this because I've spent money on it. How do I balance providing rich resources without being rich ourselves, and teach the kids to value resources that are invested in them? Okay, hi Sonia. I completely understand what you're talking about, and I know that it can feel like a lot. I'm going to echo what I just said about a decision-making process, and it's about conversations for me. If the kids are wanting to purchase a big ticket item, perhaps find ways to get that item without purchasing it. If you know someone who has it, perhaps ask to borrow it. If it can be rented, consider that. But again, the exploration and the opening of possibilities comes from conversations that you are going to have with your children about this. And it's not found in the immediate, yes, let's get that. The conversation may look more like, wow, that's fantastic and that sounds like so much fun. Let's look into this together and see what it costs. Or for me and my family, I would often do the research myself and bring that information to the table to enable an informed conversation with everybody. And then perhaps the next step might look like, how can we make this work? How can we do this? How can we get this for you? And when you open up the conversation, work together toward what it is the children want, that allows them to understand how a decision gets made. They understand the financial end of it a little bit, even at their young age. And they come up with really amazing ideas on their own. And they feel valued for you wanting their input in it. It's really fun to just start brainstorming ideas to get what they want. Like I said, renting the item or borrowing it, looking for used ones to purchase. And what you're looking for here is not only supporting and encouraging their interests, but also for you to feel good about it. And so you can share how you feel about it as long as you have a yes energy. And that's not so much a yes energy, yes, we can get this about the item, but the yes energy is about that thing that your child is drawn to having. And that's what should make you light up, because that's a part of who your child is, because that's something that sparked their interest. And what you want to give them is an enthusiastic, loving yes energy to something that they're interested in. Another very important factor is this: if you do end up purchasing an item, whether it costs a lot of money or not, it's really important for you to release any expectation you have of them ever using it. Like you said, you have a hard time doing. Kids can feel when the parent is holding on to an expectation of any kind, and especially if the parent has invested money in something. And from my experience, nothing makes a child turn in the other direction faster than to have a parent attaching an expectation to something. So the general energy you want surrounding any purchase is to feel good about it and to let go of your attachments and expectations. Just let it be and let it flow. And even if they still don't want anything to do with it after they expressed an interest in it, just keep living forward, because children's interests swirl and flow and shift and evolve and change. And this is not only natural, it's a necessary part of their unschooling lives. This is how they learn what they love. This is how they learn what they don't like. And even if they're walking toward it enthusiastically one day, the next day when something else lights a spark within them, we don't want to redirect them from the new spark back to the old spark. We want to keep encouraging and nurturing them. When my son Sam was young, he really wanted a nice guitar. We had a lot of affordable guitars in our house. And the guitar that he wanted was an $800 guitar. And we did what I said, suggested to you as a family. We talked about it a lot. We looked at a lot of options. We searched for the best deal and found this one that he wanted. And we decided as a family that we would trade in an old video game console for some money toward the guitar. These were family discussions that we had. Sam is now 22, and you can probably guess that I'm going to say that he has never played that guitar. In fact, the only person who has ever played the guitar is Sawyer Fredericks. Do you remember, Anna, when we were in Sam's apartment?
Yes.
The Fredericks family was visiting one time, and we happened to be in Sam's apartment, and Sam's guitar was there, and Sawyer picked it up and played Sam's $800 guitar. And that was a really nice time. But the important thing is that Sam has never felt bad about us purchasing this guitar for him. He really felt strongly about wanting that guitar, and we saw that in him. And he brought it with him when he moved into his own apartment, and I can see that he feels great pride in his guitar. He has this guitar that he wanted, and maybe that's enough for him. Or maybe someday he will play the guitar, but that doesn't matter. What matters is how we connected over his desire to buy this guitar all those years ago, and how we all came to feel good about this purchase with no attachments. There also have been times when we've spent money on karate lessons or zoo school or not back to school camp, or even college. And it turned out that my kids did not want to be there. In fact, that's what I was saying about the story of the not back to school camp as part of the conference talk, What is so radical about radical unschooling, that Pam will have the link to. So you can hear that story there. But in these cases, we've never held it over our kids' heads that we already invested the money in the class or the school or the uniform or the apartment or whatever, and we can't get a refund. We have always only celebrated the fact that our children know themselves well enough to say, this is not feeling right to me, and I need to go in a different direction. That is our focus. That is our energy. And as far as the money we had already spent on it, we would shift our thinking and consider it a wonderful investment in our children getting to know themselves even better. It's an investment in the fine tuning of the direction that they do want to be going in. And that really is a beautiful thing. One more point I want to make is my adult kids don't live in my home anymore. And as I was reading your question, I was looking around my house and I saw numerous things I had purchased because I was passionate and curious and wanting to learn and go in a direction of something that ignited a spark in me. Over there's my guitar, which I did play a lot at one point, but I have not picked it up in a few years. And there's my ukulele hanging on the wall. And boy, I really want to get back to that soon sometime. Under my kitchen island is a box of gadgets, a panini maker, tortilla press, a pizzelle maker, and we've got games and art supplies and craft supplies and sports equipment. Really, to us, it's all a part of life, of the flowing interests, the sparks that ignite us. And it's the same for the kids as it is for us. We wouldn't want anyone reminding us of how much we paid for that appliance that's now collecting dust. Well, I wouldn't want anybody. We wanted it when we wanted it, and maybe we will want to get it again in the future. But again, that doesn't matter. You got to get to a point of feeling good about it when you make the decision to make the purchase. So that all starts with opening up the discussion, which opens up the possibilities. So I'm handing it to you now, Pam.
Thank you so much. And I loved everything that you said. And what I wanted to do, because what struck me just for a moment was taking that, that whole expectation piece and maybe plopping it a little bit earlier in the process too. Because I remember when we first started unschooling, and I found myself in that kind of situation where I was thinking, oh, we spent money on this. Maybe it's a membership and then people didn't want to go or whatever. So what I did when I first started noticing those feelings was to dig a little bit deeper and ask myself some questions. I would remember why I thought that the kids were interested in this. And I would look at what my motivation was behind going out and purchasing it. And then I'd think about the kids' reactions at first and then over time, like when you said they're not interested anymore. So I would put all that together. And I came to realize that I was usually quicker to spend money on stuff at that point that I deemed more educational or I thought might look better to others to show them what we were doing. So I had jumped on it early, even at the mere mention of any interest for them. And I had started to attach expectations to it. And that is when I would have thoughts of, we have to do this because. So I started to see some patterns that were my clues that this was something that I needed to work through, that was part of my deschooling, not really any lesson that I needed my kids to learn. And there's where you get into all the stuff that Anne was talking about. So when it came to my children's interests, I started to work really hard to make sure I kept my own expectations out of the mix when they were asking to purchase things and to see things clearly through their eyes. And then all that, I prioritized creativity and brainstorming, all the fun ways that we could pursue that interest. Which is what Anne was talking about, rather than jumping straight into just buying it, saying yes right away, just to the interest. If buying something became part of pursuing that interest, that's cool. We would have those kinds of conversations Anne was talking about, and we'd pursue that within the real constraints of our budget. To me, it just kind of jumped out how it might be part of the deschooling process, just like jumping to lessons as a first answer when our kids want to learn something new. Like they express an interest in dancing, so we want to run out and sign them up for dance lessons when really maybe they'd be super happy to dance around the family room to their favorite music. We just can have a tendency to jump into buying things as the first answer to pursuing an interest too. There are lots of other ways to dive into things. So I think it can just help to take that moment to brainstorm all sorts of other ideas and check those out first as part of pursuing that interest and having it more organically grow to that space and through the conversations. as I said, picking up to where Anne was taking it from. All right, there. Hi. Anna? That tumbled out.
So Anne really covered almost point by point everything I want to say, down to the fact that I do this exactly. Okay. I have the super nice guitar that was only last played by Sawyer Fredericks when he was visiting. And I just lent my ukulele to a friend because it's been sitting here collecting dust.
That's so funny.
So we'll move on. And so really, all the things that she said were what, the things that we did. But I did just want to say, tap into your community. I'm fortunate to have a big homeschooling community, but really it doesn't have to be homeschooling. When you have an interest, find those people out there doing that interest. And what we found is they love sharing things with you. So if it's woodworking, we would go to people's houses that have woodworking equipment we would never be able to afford or get, and yet they are thrilled to share that with us. So people really love sharing their passion. So utilize the community is just a great option for that too. But yes, everything they said. So we can just move on and not talk about all my things collecting dust.
And I will say, musical instruments, we rented them from the local music store for a couple months at a time. Of course, then we bought a drum set and it's now out in the barn, but yeah.
Ours is in the attic.
Yeah, there you go. Tons of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, question number 3 from Jenny. Jenny writes, "Hi, Pam, Anna, and Anna. Thanks so much for taking the time to answer our questions. I'm a mom of 3 kids, 7, 4, and 2. I've been deschooling for a year, and only my eldest daughter attended 1 year of JK. I find myself in a bit of a dilemma after a conversation with my husband, who hasn't deschooled to the point that I have. Not that I'm that far at all, but he has less overall patience with the kids. So here's the dilemma. It's the holidays, so I've been super busy trying to do everything and think of everything. Plus, work has been a little more involved these last few weeks. I work part-time from home. And today, after numerous attempts to get my older 2 to stop hitting one another, I raised my voice and got angry. Now, I have made a lot of progress with patience and compassion, but I'm human and I made a mistake. Afterward, we were getting in the car and they started again. I angrily got in the driver's seat and forgot to pass them their iPads. Normally, I would have pulled over at this point and grabbed them for them, but not today. Today, I decided no iPads on the trip back home. They complained for a bit, got over it. Mistake number 2. When I picked up my husband, I explained what had happened, and his reaction upset me. He said, "Good. It's good for them to understand that people have limits. It's human nature, and their behavior can sometimes result in negative consequences." Although I disagree with my own behavior toward them and don't feel it helped deepen our connection at all, the fact that he connected it to people's human nature having limits and the kids learning I had my own jolted me a bit. It caused me for a second to think that he had a point. Shocking. Is this part of learning about one another? I should add that I believe I often struggle with balance between being too permissive. However, that might be working through more deschooling while being surrounded by people who aren't. Curious about your perspective. So just to start off, yes, I think you nailed it, Jenny. It is part of learning about one another. But, that's a big but, it doesn't mean that the learning stops there. You guys can continue to learn. So after things calm down, you can talk with the kids a bit about what happened. You can apologize for your reaction and your choice in that moment. You guys can talk about what happens when you're feeling frustrated, how it can shut us down to where we don't see any other choices. You can mention a couple of the things that led to your frustration, the overwhelm of the holidays, and how you'll watch out for those clues to try to catch yourself before you get that frustrated next time. So they'll understand you a bit better. They'll see that frustration is a human thing, not just a kid thing. And they see you wanting to find a different path beyond punitive measures to try out next time. And you can ask for their suggestions about what you might do to help them next time they're arguing with each other, whether it's at home or in the car, so that it's not just about your reaction, but also about the things that led up to it, everybody's role in the situation. So that's the really cool thing, is you get to learn more about how they see things and have something new to try out next time. I know it can be really tempting to try to ignore these times when we behave in ways we wish we hadn't. But if we instead take responsibility for those moments and then have those conversations with our kids about them after, we can all learn a lot more about ourselves and about each other and come up with some real ideas about ways to do things differently next time, rather than just kind of finding ourselves in a repeating pattern of, blowing up or doing something we regret and then not learning from it, ignoring it, and just it happening again and again. This is a great way to take something that happened and learn from it and come up with a plan to try next time. And you're going to keep doing that over the years because everybody's going to be growing and changing. Different things are going to be bothering them. Our different levels of frustration will learn over the years that, depending on what's going on, some our cup will fill sooner or take longer to fill depending on the environment, depending on so many things. So those are the pieces that we're all learning about ourselves and about each other, and that's all stuff we can bring to the conversation moving forward and finding the tools that work. Anna?
Yeah, so I agree with all of that and kind of saying the same thing, but it is kind of why I like to talk about living consensually too and finding solutions that feel good to everyone. Because I do think we all obviously have feelings and limits and needs, and I think it's important for relationships that we communicate those to each other. To me, that's what a real relationship looks like. I don't believe in punishments or withholding love or support. And it sounds like where that's coming from in this question is really from a place of having passed that limit. So I think I would look for clues before getting to that point. Talk about how you're feeling, how the arguing is making you feel. I know for me, I'm super sensitive to energy of people around me. And so if there's a lot of arguing or contention, it can just really make me feel scattered. And I'm certainly at my best. So I can help talk about how that's making me feel and what's going on in my life. If it's a stressful time or if there are things going on, then it helps me to be able to say that so that they can see, because maybe they didn't know that, or, and that's again part of that relationship and communication. Helping them hear each other and giving them tools to communicate. Unschooling is not about ignoring our own feelings. I think that's a common pitfall of people new to the journey with all the stuff that Anne said with the just say yes. That's not, no. It's discussions, it's talking, it's relationships. And I think some people are just kind of making up for lost time, not really sure what tools to fill in with. And so that's, part of what we're talking about. The challenge is that you do reach a point of no return, and I think it's much harder for kids or anyone to understand the dramatic difference than to understand that you're human and have needs and feelings along the way. And so I'm going to give an example just in case that's not making sense. Years ago, we were at a house and the kids were running around the house with food, like messy food everywhere, all over the house. And I was kind of like a deer in headlights, but the mom was acting like it was fine. And I was like, okay, deep breath. And so we'll see. And the kids kept doing it. And so I was like, okay, she's fine. I talked to my kids, but this is what was happening. And then suddenly it wasn't fine. And there was yelling and upset. And I could see the kids, how confused they were, because this is what they'd been doing for hours. And then now it suddenly wasn't fine. And in our house, when my kids were little, I told them that it really stressed me out to find sticky food all over the house. We live in the South, so that means bugs if you have food around the house. So we talked about eating, especially popsicles, but really any kind of snacky things in the kitchen. So we had a special spot and we made it fun, and it was a connecting time where we would all hang out and have our snacks. And if you were to say on the surface, well, we eat in the kitchen, that sounds kind of like this limiting, controlling piece. But I knew what my limits were, and we worked together to find a solution that felt good to all of us. And kids really want to be a part of that community and family. So these are discussions that they're happy to have and be a part of. And I think sharing information and feelings with them is just really all a part of that. But just to clarify, if say there were ever a popsicle outside of the kitchen, there would be no yelling or no punishing. We just talk about it. What's going on? Do you need to do something? And if there was something that required them to be somewhere, but yet we had to have the popsicle right now, we'd grab a towel, or we'd figure out another way to address my concern about sticky food being left around. So for me, it's just all about that communication and understanding each other's needs and working together. We've found that there's always solutions to these problems. It's just that black and white thinking that kind of gets us stuck. But when you're open and talking and sharing, things just flow so much more easily. Okay, Anne.
Hi, Jenny. I can't even tell you how I hear you and the part about your husband. I need you to know that with my kids being 22 and 26, once in a while, not very often, my husband can still pull out a line from his own father's mouth. Like I said, very infrequently, but still, once in a while. And we all still think he's really the most fabulous father ever because me and my kids, we understand how deeply ingrained those definitions from society and from our own parents' lives and mouths can be. I've learned that if I need to vent to my husband, I first look at him and say, I need to vent, and I don't want you to jump on my bandwagon. I just want you to hear me. And so then I vent, and then he understands that he hears me and everything, and we both go back to seeing our children and how they shine again, because I understand what you're saying is that you were holding bad feelings about what you did to the kids, and your husband jumped on your bandwagon. Like, yeah, good. So that's just one way that my husband and I have learned to not go in that direction, to not, let him go in that direction anymore. And I knew Pam and Anna would address your concerns wonderfully. So I just want to talk about also when you got in the car angrily, because I was reminded of a post I'd once written at Shine with Unschooling. It was about a day when I was frustrated with my boys when they were younger because we needed to get to an appointment. And by the time we got in the car, I just kind of got in, slammed the doors, and peeled out because my focus was on getting there and my energy was in a place of frustration. And I remember driving and looking in the rearview mirror at my kids in the back seat and looking at myself even. And what brought me back to where I needed to be is the fact that I missed who I was when my beingness was not being hijacked by frustration. And those kids in the back seat, oh my God, I so missed enjoying their presence and their company and our joyful conversations that we always have in the car. And not only did I miss who I was and connecting with my kids and who they are, but I was also so focused on getting there that I wasn't noticing all the gifts that the universe puts in my path that I notice all day long, every day, like the way the sunlight filters through the clouds. Perhaps that day it was like reaching down to touch me, a female cardinal that flies in front of my car. It's my favorite bird. Just all these little gifts from the universe when we're in a different state of mind and holding on to frustration and just letting that negative experience play over and over in our heads. We're missing out on all this lovely stuff. So I just remember that time when I was surrounded by such love and so many gifts, and I was able to shift because there was no way I was going to stay in that place where these things would go unnoticed and unlived. So that's what helps me pivot back to a place of love and kindness and appreciation. Also, when I was listening to Pam and Anna talk, I was reminded of part of my Childhood Redefined talk, where I talk about the weight that we are owning. And because you were talking about how it was the holidays and all this other stuff, and by the time you get out to the car, you're owning all this weight, and then we have a tendency to just hand that weight to our children. And it's really important to be mindful when we are doing that. And I do talk about that more at Childhood Redefined, if you can get to the next one. So anyway, Anna has the next question, I believe.
I do. Okay, so question 4 is from Jen. I have an almost 18-month-old and I'm very drawn to unschooling. I'm curious how you would apply this philosophy to the sleep issue we are currently dealing with. I believe that sleep should be like food, that my son should sleep when he's tired, be awake when he's rested, regardless of whether that is on a schedule people think an 18-month-old, quote, should be on. But it seems the last couple months, my son had a very hard time actually going to sleep. Often in the evening, he will start to seem tired, rubbing his eyes or getting a little cranky. So we'll say, looks like you're getting tired, and we'll brush his teeth, get him dressed for bed, read a story, turn on the white noise in the dark, and then nurse or rock to sleep, depending on whether it's me or my husband doing it. He will be floppy, limp, drowsy, clearly ready to sleep, but it will either take 2+ hours before his eyes actually close, or after about 30 minutes, he'll wake himself up and be ready to play again. At that point, if we continue to hold on to him and try to put him to sleep, it will become a wrestling match with a lot of crying that lasts an hour or more before he finally sleeps. If we don't fight him, he will often stay up until 11 or midnight or even later, and when he starts acting tired again, we try to put him to sleep again, and it takes over an hour before his eyes close. If he were able to just go to his room and go to sleep like an older child, I wouldn't mind him staying up so late, but that is later than I want to be up, and it means I'm not getting enough sleep to function during the day, and it also means I'm not getting any time to myself or to spend with my husband. We don't have this issue with his nap. When he starts acting tired for nap, I change his diaper, turn on the white noise, and make his room dark, and he nurses to sleep within 10 or 15 minutes. Thanks for your insight. Okay, hi, Jen. Sleep is certainly something that comes up a lot with little ones and sometimes big ones too. I think it's this challenge of figuring out how to meet everyone's needs when needs can be so different. Just me personally, I always first check in with diet. My husband is super sensitive to caffeine, and if he has any after about 3 in the afternoon, he will be up chit-chatting with me the entire night. It can be very challenging. So I'm like, wait, do you really need that chocolate when it's 5 o'clock at night? When we found when our kids were younger that dairy caused what we called the dairy dance. It really amped them up, and so it wasn't something we wanted to do close to bedtime. Also, artificial dyes can have that same effect of kind of amping up and not making it harder to fall asleep, making it harder to kind of calm the nerves. So a quick check of patterns around diet can be really helpful just to see if there's anything going on there. There is a book that people liked. I mean, now, again, my kids are much older, so it's been a while, but it was called the No Cry Sleep Solution. For me, I don't think it's a magic bullet, but I think she has some interesting thoughts and tools, and you can see how it fits for you. She has a belief that there's a window for sleep that's actually a lot earlier than people think, and that if it's missed, she would describe exactly what you've described above because that window is missed. For us, we're night owls, so that part didn't really work for us. We just ended up flowing with the late nights, and I would start getting my quiet time in the mornings, which was new for me because it used to be at night. And I'd find time with my husband's at other times. I will say that having young kids is a time of creativity. So it will definitely get easier. And the thing with toddlers is it changes so fast. So even though it feels kind of long in the moment, it's changing monthly, weekly, and suddenly you have a much older child that has a completely different thing going on. So I think it's, can help to look at that longer perspective too. But we'll see. Pam, or sorry, do I go to Anne?
You go to
yes,
Anne.
Sorry.
You always go to Anne. I always go to Pam.
I always go to Anne.
I thought patterns would help.
It should.
Because my response is Anna will talk about diets and patterns and and my very last
so well.
My very last note says, remember that this is flowing and changing all the time, and this too shall pass. So that's about it. But I did want to, the thing about it flowing and changing all the time, and this too shall pass, is to maybe loosen up your definitions of what it should look like, even though you're very good at that already. Maybe you can loosen a little more. Like you're saying, I'm not getting time to myself or spend with my husband, and I don't think I ever had time to myself or spend with my husband alone, and therefore I learned how to get that during the day in ways that don't look as typical as you would expect. Time for yourself, you know what I mean? It's kind of appreciating when you have a moment to do something that is completely yours while your child is awake or next to you, or maybe napping for a minute or whatever, really taking in, noticing, deliberately choosing to appreciate the times when you are able to focus totally on something that belongs to you. And same thing with your husband, just those times just when you're connecting and sharing a glass of wine or whatever. uh, your child doesn't have to be asleep for you to have these wonderful moments, as long as you pay attention to them and deliberately choose to feel appreciation for them. Pam?
So Pam, can I say one more thing?
Of
Just
course.
jumping off of what Anne said, and it's something that Anne and I have talked about actually before. Anyway, it'll make more sense when I say it. But I want to just really reiterate what she just said, because we didn't do date nights, we didn't have lots of time alone. My kids are close in age, so there was just a long period of time where it was a lot about the kids, and we did look for those moments, those small moments to connect and do. Now my kids are older, and I would just want to say we're as happy as we've ever been. Like, each stage was so wonderful, and now we're in this wonderful stage where we feel like teenagers again. And I know that Anne and Dave has had the same kind of thing, but it was great along the way. It just looked different. And I think that's okay. I think maybe it's understanding that it will look different at different times, but it doesn't take away. And my husband and I have been together for 30 years, so it's okay, for it to have these different stages and look a little bit different. So just want to throw that.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think the point of noticing those little moments,
Yeah.
rather than expecting to find big pieces, whether it's alone time with your spouse. I know, Jen, that you mentioned that you're not trying to keep your son on a schedule, that other people think he should be on. And I think now is your opportunity to step up that unconventionality again, to really, because, some of the ways that you spoke about, time for yourself, time with my husband, getting him to bed, some of those you can play with more creatively, I think. When I was looking at situations like that, I always step back to try and figure out what my real needs were in that situation. So instead of thinking about how I thought those needs needed to be met and then trying to create a schedule for that, I would step back and say, okay, well, what is it that I'm really trying to accomplish with that? And start looking, is there other ways that I can do that? So you mentioned that your son goes to sleep quite comfortably for his nap. Maybe look at what is it that he may be seeing differently that makes going to sleep at night, different than going to sleep for his nap.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that I can make nighttime more similar to how he goes to sleep for his nap? So, maybe you've got a nice nighttime routine with him, because you talk about how, you start it when he seems tired. And that's great, but maybe he's ready for that routine to change, So you talk about letting him stay up, then you're getting tired, does he kind of fall asleep where he is? And then you can just carry him to the room. Like, think of all sorts of crazy ways that you might be able to meet those needs. It reminded me of when I was reading it, playing quietly, for him to play quietly at night while you nap, whether that might be something you could figure out. Because I remember so clearly when Joseph he had to be around that age, 18 months. And I was pregnant with Lissy. And when I got home from work, I was so tired that there was a few times where I swear I really needed a nap. So what I did was make sure that his playroom, which was technically the living room, but we didn't have living room furniture, made sure it was very safe with just his toys, and I laid on the floor across the one open doorway, knowing that he'd have to climb over me to leave the room, and that would wake me up. And I just got there was another time I would lie there and he would just, drive his cars over me, because especially when you're pregnant, I had this nice big hill for the cars, but I caught a few minutes of sleep that way too. There's there's just so many different ways that we can still meet our needs. And that's the other big point, is that things change over time. This isn't going to be the way it has to be forever. Just take the time to play around with things, to see how things happen, and then look after. Like as in after the fact, the next day, how did that work? Am I a little less tired? Is he a little more comfortable? Did he sleep about the same amount of time? But think of those couple of hours every night that you'll free up if you're not trying to coax him to get to sleep. If you're trying to more play around with different ways to change up his routine, start with trying to make it closer to the way he goes to sleep for his nap, and just see how it works out, and then try something else, and then try something else. And I think you might find that you'll find a new routine that works for him, and don't think that's going to work forever either. Maybe a few months or a year down the road, that's going to change again. So I know it can be hard to think of it as fun now, but that really is the fun thing, about living with our children and figuring these things out. And I do find it fun to go like, holy, something's not working here. Let's kind of go back to first principles. What is it that I'm really needing to do? And what are some of the cool ways that we could actually get that done? And it doesn't matter what, as you said, it doesn't matter what it looks like from the outside looking in. Okay, last question, Anne.
I'm going to stay on this one a little bit more. It just occurred to me when I had said before about how our children feel our expectations. I really believe that our children feel when we want them to go to sleep, and they will not go to sleep. So that is a huge thing, that if you're holding this tension, especially with nursing and everything, when you want him to go to sleep, and I've been there. I was there yesterday waiting for my corgi to poop, because I took my bulldog to the doctor and my corgi would not poop. So I so get that. You just want this so bad, but they feel it, and they feel something is off. It's not that they're not doing it because you want them to do it, but something is off in your energy. So if you just take the time to breathe, because it's the energy that they're picking up, breathe and trust, and just look at your beautiful child and just let it flow. Just have the energy of whatever happens will be just fine. I'm good with anything. So that might release a little of the tension energy that your child is feeling. So did you have something else to say? Anybody else? No. Okay. Nope. Question number 5 from Jen. I have one son, 18 months, and I am unschooling him. I love everything about it, watching him learn, explore, get excited, discover things, and share all of that with him. I love showing him the breadth of the world. For instance, he got interested in some toy trains, so I have showed him pictures of real trains, videos. We have ridden trains and gotten him other train sets with tracks. It is so much fun to explore each interest with him. My question is about how to balance that with the household work that needs to be done, cooking, cleaning, etc. I try to let my son participate in these things if he wants, or go off and play by himself while I work if he prefers. He is often content to play on his own without interaction with me, to the point where I could spend most of the day doing housework with little interaction with him beyond changing diapers and helping him get snacks when he asks for food. In so many of your answers to people, you talk about spending time doing things your kids love with them, to see what they love and see them shine. So I'm curious how you balance that with the time needed for housework, especially with young children, since help from him can make a 10-minute task take hours. And also any thoughts on whether I need to more actively stop my adult agenda to engage with him, sit near him and watch him play, or just let him go on his own until he asks for my attention. It just seems like a lot of letting him do whatever he wants without engagement, but if I always engage with what he wants to do, then I never get housework done. While he's sleeping isn't really an option for us, because he will rarely sleep without me lying next to him, and in those rare times, that is my precious alone time for self-care. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is the same, Jen, as the last question, but it just struck me that maybe if it is the same, Jen, the nighttime thing could be from your child just wanting to be with you more and have you more, totally to himself, focused on him. But moving forward, with this answer, just as we've been saying that there's a broad spectrum with a lot of choices in between a yes or no answer, there are also infinite amount of possibilities between not engaging with your boy at all or not getting any housework done at all. There are so many ways you can be with your child, fully and deliberately be with him, not just playing next to him or watching him play. Joyfully connecting with him while you are doing some housework, if that works out. And as I was reading your question earlier and I tried to relate it to my life with my children, I had a hard time, and I realized that's because I didn't seem to separate life into categories like that. I always loved and felt like my job as being my children's mother and an unschooling parent was my priority. And whatever got done around the house outside of that priority got done, and what didn't get done just didn't get done. But to me, my daily job description as my children's mother and unschooling parent did not include focusing on housework. That's not to say I didn't do any housework. I did. But it was all within the flow of our lives, within the ebbing and flowing of my children and I doing things together, connecting together, then doing our own things once in a while. Most of all, I incorporated getting things done as we lived our lives throughout every day. We would clean up as much as we wanted to when we were done playing or creating together. And mostly we would just talk and hang out together when I would do stuff around the house. To this day, with my sons being 22 and 26, I seem to say how old they are a lot, but it's important because it's been a long time that we've been unschooling. They still view folding the laundry as time connecting, our time as connecting with each other. Because for all of their childhoods, I would ask, do you want to come and be by me while I fold the laundry? And they did, because we loved being together. We connected together so joyfully. And they always knew all their lives that this was a time when they were my focus, not the laundry. I'd listen to their stories about their games, or we'd talk about some plans. Or when they were very young, like your child, I'd have something interesting there for them to play around with. But my focus was still on them, because you can do that when you're doing laundry. You can do that with a lot of jobs. You don't need your focus totally on the job. And when my boys were older, I just started handing them something to fold, cloth napkins, the square things, washcloths, and they just started folding it. If they had said, no, I don't want to, that would have been cool. But all of that just evolved into all of us folding the laundry because our focus was always on our connection with each other at that time. Same thing goes for emptying the dishwasher, setting the table. We just enjoyed being around each other, and we would do these jobs while we were talking, while we were together. I never called them chores or housework. They really just felt like a part of living together in our home. And I never attached any negative separate energy to it. It was life. So like if we were in a joyful place together, that joy would flow into us starting to do a job together, because we wanted to have a clean kitchen counter, and we wanted clean dishes, and we wanted a place to eat dinner, and we wanted a dinner to eat. Something I have used as a guide to make sure my focus stayed on my children and our connection together are these words that I had made into a bumper sticker a while back. I've probably said this 100 times before, and it has helped others as well. It goes, how can I connect with my children today? Expand their worlds, bring joy into their lives, nurture, encourage what they love to do. And you can easily turn that question into a daily job description, a mantra almost. Today I will connect with my child, expand his world, bring joy into his life, and nurture and encourage what he loves to do. So that might be helpful to you to remind yourself to stay focused on your job as your child's mother and his unschooling parent, and focus and cultivate. I'm stealing Anna's word right now. Cultivate your joyful connection with your child. That's your energy that you get to choose to invest in that, and it's the most beautiful thing. Now to you, Pam.
Well, when I was listening to your stories about your conversations over laundry, for us, and my kids are 19, 22, and 24, and our conversation time seemed to end up being in the kitchen. If I was doing something, I remember when they were younger, and if I was like, oh, I want to go start dinner so we can have this, or maybe we have a quick conversation about what we'd be having for dinner. And, do you want to come play in the kitchen? So sometimes that was an option. Or if they were starting something and asked me to play, hey, can we play in the kitchen? Because I can take my turn, in between while I'm cooking and cook while you guys have your turn or whatever. It was just like Anne was saying, it being a part of our days, a part of our lives. And even now, it's still a great place where we have conversations. If they know I'm cooking, they'll come in, and that will be a time when they know, we've kind of got each other's attention, and they'll come in and start sharing things because they know I'm out and about and cooking or whatever. There's been times where we're having conversations, and because I was there, I was cleaning out the dishwasher, and then the dishwasher's done, so I'm like, but we're still talking. So, maybe I wipe down the counter, maybe whatever extra jobs, there's extra things. Because you know what? That's one nice way to have conversations is when you're doing something else alongside. It's easier to chat than it is if you're, staring each other in the face. So that's something that I've really noticed over the years and have really enjoyed. One thing that jumped out, because you said that he's often content to play on his own without interaction, and I just thought that would be something fun to explore for yourself, because it may certainly be true, and you don't want to keep inserting yourself into his play. If he's in the flow and he's totally engaged, you don't want to be interrupting it. Yet that's the other piece, is you do want to stay well connected. Anne shared that quote. You want to know what he's enjoying. You want to be enjoying his interests with him. You want to stay connected so that you can bring new and interesting things into his life. You mentioned trains and all the other things you did around it. There may be other things other than trains that, you might have noticed if you were spending more time with him that way rather than housework, because the housework is always going to be there. So maybe it might help to just tell yourself, you know what, I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks actively trying to engage with him more rather than worrying about the housework, because that can all flow together rather than seeing them as separate, and just see what happens. Does he like us having more engaged time? What new stuff am I learning about him? What are the other things around the house that we could do? Yeah. And it doesn't matter if it takes longer to do with them, because I think there's another one. Take the idea that housework needs to be done efficiently. No, you can think of it as another connecting thing, something that's done while you're connecting with your child, or something that you're doing together or enjoying together. The time itself doesn't need to be something that you measure or judge yourself on, whether it's done quickly. Anyway, so that's kind of what jumped out at me when I read your question, Jen. And Anna?
Yeah, and really the same things, jumped out at me too. And there was an internet meme though that says, "You'll never look back on your life and wish you'd spent more time cleaning the house." So that's probably important to think about. But I really love what Anne said, is that we didn't really separate it in that way either. We're just living life. We want to eat dinner. We need to have the dishes cleaned, so we're loading things together. We're doing so. It's all life. So I think separating it can maybe cause some of the rub there. But since you guys really covered all those other pieces, the same thought occurred to me, Anne, as if this is the same person, this could be a puzzle piece for the nighttime, because I'm wondering if, your child is seeing that time as special time with you, and he wants it, or with your husband who maybe is gone during the day. I don't know that, but you didn't mention him during your daytime descriptions. So I'm wondering if your child is playing independently during the day, and then now I get this great time with mom at night. So it may be looking at those patterns and saying, can I meet those needs during the day so that that's not happening? I don't know, but that's jumped out at me too. So I just wanted to mention that, but you guys covered everything else.
Well, and
Yeah, that's a great point, because he'll be wanting to stay awake, to have this time,
right. And not only that, our children can feel when we are really present with them or not. Even if we're sitting by them and we're thinking about something else, that's not being present with our children. You know, we want to give ourselves to them and receive from them the gift of themselves also. So it's a beautiful connection. You're talking about connecting with each other during the day so that he feels safe at night and doesn't want to, cling on to you tighter at night because he knows you're right there. So,
yeah, I think that's a great point, because even if they're not the same gen, sleeping gen, that it could be something that seems unrelated, that is affecting it. So that's all part of the digging in and just playing around with what's going on. Right. So I think that's a great point, whether or not they're the same gen.
Now I'm going to call my adult children and invite them over for dinner and do laundry with me.
You know what? That's why I've always kept pizza night once a week. I know it takes me like 3 hours to make individual pizzas for everybody, but oh my gosh, it was always so much fun as they come in and chat and what would you like on your pizza this week? And there were a few years there where I was known as kitchen lady, right? Because they'd know, because maybe I was baking or whatever, but it was always, that seemed to be the place where we would always have such great conversations. Everybody was relaxed. We were just doing things, and I would just kind of extend what I was doing until the conversation died out. It wasn't, okay, I'm done, let's stop talking.
Right, exactly. And it's a dinner party. It's a family dinner party. I mean, when you have a dinner party, that's what you want. You want people to gather and have conversations, but that's our lives, because of the connection that we're cultivating.
Yes.
Cultivating.
I do love that word. Okay, thank you so much to both of you for answering questions with me. Yay!
Fun. Thank you.
I know it's always so much fun to chat with you guys about unschooling. And just a reminder for everyone, there are links in the show notes for the stuff that we've mentioned in the episode. And if you would like to submit a question for the Q&A show, just go to livingjoyfully.ca/podcast and click on the link. All right, everybody, I am wishing you a wonderful day.
Yes, thank you.
Bye. Thanks for listening. I hope you found it helpful. You might also like the backlist episodes at livingjoyfully.ca/podcast. While you're there, be sure to pick up your free copy of my book, What is Unschooling? In it, we'll explore some of the common questions people have when they first hear about unschooling, like, how will my child learn? How do I know they're learning? What is deschooling? And how do I get started? It's also available at many online ebook retailers. And if you'd like to connect online, you can find me on Facebook at Living Joyfully. Until next time, have fun living and learning with your family.